Hi, guys. Well, welcome back to Crosswalk, where real faith meets real life. Today, couple special treats for you guys. So we've actually started the video series back. We have Chuck behind the camera today. He's been wanting to play with his equipment. He just got it in, and so he's not going to be up here with us. Figured it'd be a perfect opportunity for him to get behind the camera and figure some stuff out technical-wise. But actually, our biggest treat for you guys is we have Ryan Hoffman with us today, okay? And this guy, I had to make sure to point this out because Ryan is a Tennessee State powerlifting champion.
Yeah, I accidentally got first place in my age and weight class.
Accidentally.
I was in the 198 weight class, and it kind of hurt my feelings when they put me in this age category because it's called submasters, which I assume was like old people.
You're not that old. How old are you, Ryan?
36. I'm 36. The age range is like 33 to 39 for
That shouldn't
submasters.
classify as submasters.
But yeah, I went to a meet this past Saturday. It was my first time, and it was the Tennessee State Championship, and I lifted some heavy weight and walked away with a trophy.
brought the trophy back home. For those of you who don't know, if you guys aren't watching the video series, I mean, he has bulging biceps and just he's absolutely jacked. It's a gorilla of a man sitting in front of me.
That's quite an exaggeration.
I try to hire him as my personal trainer, but I'm just not even on the same playing field.
198 is a very low weight class. I'll just mention that. It's very low. I'm not very big.
No, very respectable, very respectable. But so the last couple of weeks, we have actually been kind of on this through the book series. Kind of wanted to take a step back. Okay, so when we first started this podcast, the whole main theme was that real faith meets real life. Okay, and so determining what is real faith and how does that impact and apply to our real life. And so we have tried to give example after example for what this real faith is. We've tried to give example after example for what applications this real faith applies to our real life and how real faith changes real life and how real faith impacts real life. But today I kind of wanted to step back and do something a little bit different from the book series that we've been on. Don't worry, we're going to be continuing on with it. Actually, our next episode, we're going to be on with Kevin Terry from what church did he go to? First Baptist? Yeah, he goes to he's First Baptist, and he is going to be in Huntsville. Yeah. And so he's going to be on here with us, and we're going to be doing the part 2 to the Romans series of hitting the mark that we'd started with Pastor James last week. So we're going to be doing that again, finishing it up. Hope you guys can tune in for it because it's going to be really, really good. We talked about kind of the individual level as a Christians last week, and this time we're going to be grouping it together as a church. And so it's going to be really important, really good to hear. So tune in for that. But for today, like I said, I kind of wanted to step back and do something a little bit different. I wanted to show the most prime example that I can of how that real faith impacts your real life. Whenever you choose to go down the route of accepting this real faith, that you've no longer slept in the shadows, that you decided that you wanted to wake up and you decided that God has changed your life and you want to make an impact for it, and you start to pursue this route of real faith, how does that look? What happens? What are the roads that you go down? What are the shortcomings? What are the downfalls? And what are the this peace and this joy and this overwhelming feeling that we have of Christ whenever we accept Him? Yeah, how does that apply to our lives afterwards? And so there's just so many questions and so many routes to go down and so many things that we can't cover. And that's exactly why I brought Ryan on today, because Ryan has a really interesting story to tell about his testimony. Like he said, he's 36 years old, and Ryan was born and raised in church his whole life. But sometimes he was missing the mark. And so I would just want Ryan to tell his story a little bit about how he chose to go down this path of real faith and how real faith has impacted his life. So Ryan, I will turn it over to you.
Absolutely. So you used the word real faith meeting real life.
Yeah.
And where we live in Tennessee, very, very rural area.
Small town USA.
Small town USA, no doubt. And so about every mile on the road, you will find another church. And
Yep.
there's no reason for you to not be able to find a church that works for you if you live here, because there's literally one on every corner. And so the danger of that is not real faith, faith that is not real. And it's very easy to get caught in that trap when you live here, because let's say you want to go out and witness to someone, and first of all, it's hard to even witness to anyone here, because you're like, oh, well, if they live here, they must be.
They're probably already Christians.
Yeah, they must be a Christian. They must already be
Well, and
saved.
that's the beauty of this, is that because this podcast, most of our listeners are people from around here, but we want to branch out. We want to spread the gospel as far and as wide and as deep as we possibly can. Okay, so anybody with an ear to hear that wants to hear it, we want to preach it to them. Okay, and we want to bring it to them in the best way that we can. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're not from Scott County, you're not from Tennessee, then there are other applications where this applies too, because Scott County is not the only small town USA in the Bible Belt out there. There's a lot of other counties and there's a lot of other states out there that have churches every other mile, that have people that in the small town USA where you just basically assume everybody's saved because it's just how it is.
And even, one of the reasons that you believe everyone is saved is everyone knows all the right things to say, because they've heard it their entire lives. And when you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone, when you finally have the courage to talk to someone about Jesus, and they're very quick to tell you that they're saved and they have all these right answers, and I feel like I'm a prime example of this. I just got saved this year. I got saved at 35 years old, and let me tell you, I'm blessed and lucky that I lived this long. I'm very blessed and very lucky, and me being someone who has grown up and lived in church and lived this life for basically my whole life, I feel like I'm a prime example of that. Whenever people would, talk to me about Jesus, I knew all the right things to say.
Oh, yeah.
Like I knew the Bible, at least medium. I would not say,
right, what you've been taught in Sunday school.
I would not say I'm a scholar, but just being in Sunday school week after week and attending services 2 or 3 times a week, you gather that information in your brain, and it's always there. And for me, it was not uncommon for me to be asked to lead prayer, and I would. I've heard people pray my whole life. I can pray. I can do that too. I can spit out the same things that I've heard my entire life. I can tell the same common Bible stories, and could maybe even talk doctrine a little bit, not in depth or anything, but I, even as an unsaved person, I could still say the right things so that if someone was trying to witness to me, they would assume I was saved. And taking me completely out of the equation, I'm just an example of that. That's very common here, where there's plenty of people who just kind of live and exist in church without having that actual real relationship with Jesus.
And which oftentimes, we find that sometimes it's not just like what you said that you knew the right word, you knew the things to say to when people were trying to witness to you, to convince them, oh yeah, I'm right there with you, I'm a Christian, I go to church, whatever the case may be. But it's oftentimes not just those people that are talking to us that we are deceiving. It's sometimes ourselves, or most of the time ourselves. Having talked ourselves into, I'm a good person. I go to church, I do the Sunday schools, and when the youth events do events, man, I go to all the events and I'm there all the time. I even stack the chairs at church.
Right.
I stack the chairs
and
at
like,
church, man.
And for me, I would tend to spend my time with Christian people.
Yeah, right.
And like, those would just be the people I would hang out with. Even I worked out of state for a few years up in Virginia, and I was working for a game company. I'm not sure how to explain what I'm trying to say here, but there were not many Christians working within this company. Just that's not the kind of people who worked that job. And I remember my first week there, it might have even been my first day, but the most Christian person in that company just latched on to me. And even me being an unsaved person, but living that life for so long, even then these Christians like saw me as one of them, and so they would like latch on.
Oh yeah,
to
they pull you right in.
Yeah.
And so how did that? I know for you personally. So did you? Like I said earlier, were you convinced that did you think that you were saved earlier in?
No.
Or did you know? I mean, you did deep down.
No, and that's a very good question. I feel like in this area and all Bible Belt areas, it's very common for kids to get saved young. To kids have like a profession of faith,
right?
Like at like a vacation Bible school, or like maybe their family pressured them into going forward when they were just a kid,
right?
And I feel like that's common, and not. I'm not saying that no one gets saved at age 7 or 8, but you definitely have a better understanding of what's at stake when you're older. Like I don't want to feel these feelings, so if I just ignore them, they'll eventually go away. And I'm sure you've heard there's a term for that. You're hardening your heart,
right?
Yeah, when Jesus is working on you, and the Holy Spirit is working on you, the more times that conviction comes and you shove it away, the easier it becomes to ignore that conviction. And you're hardening your heart, and so you harden your heart enough, and that conviction stops coming.
That's a dangerous place to be.
Definitely a dangerous place. And when the conviction stopped coming, I had never had a salvation experience at that point. You asked if I had ever thought I was saved. No, it was never like that. I just kept going to church because I liked it. I liked the structure. I liked being around good people. Because
they've done
just being around good people.
They've done studies now, and this to say, and which I don't have the stats on. I was reading up on this the other day, but they've actually done studies, where they say that if you are with a religious affiliation, that it adds 15 years to your life because you're happier and you're less. It kills depression and anxiety and all this other stuff just from being religiously affiliated. Okay, and which that's great. I'm not saying that that's bad, but that's kind of missing the whole point here in a sense, because this is not just about a religious affiliation like a social club, and that's kind of where we're going with this whole thing today. Is that our church is not a social club, okay? I mean, it's great to be social in church.
Absolutely.
I have friends, my best friends that I have, are in church with me, and some of the best friends that I have today are people I grew up with in church. And so as far as like a social status go, yeah, it's great to have friends and friendships in church. But as far as a social club, this is not a social gathering where we just come to have fun and just shoot the bull, at church, because it's fun. It's just what we do. It's just traditional. We're gonna dress up in our best suits and the best ties that we can and look as good as possible to come in here and supposedly glorify God.
There is definitely something to be said about that, especially for youth. Like, if you have a good, solid youth program going in your church, like, that's giving those teenagers a place to go where they're not off doing drugs or having sex in their car.
Yeah.
And like, even if there's no relationship with Jesus, you are giving them better opportunities.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, which we talked about this a little bit last week, is taking the gospel out of it. And that's kind of what we see in this Bible Belt religious communities sometimes, is that we've taken the gospel out of it. We've focused on, well, you know what, just as long as we're doing youth events, it keeps them away from doing drugs, keeps them away from partying and having sex and doing all this stuff. As long as we're, having church and we're just keeping people in church, it keeps them out of this or whatever the case may be. And so we're not doing it out of love to feed them the gospel. We're not doing it out of love to feed them, a way of salvation and letting them know, who Jesus is and his love. We're not doing it out of love and kindness for the hearts of what Christ has called us to do. If we're doing it out of, this is just, it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're doing all these good things, but yet we've taken the gospel out of it.
Right.
And so therefore it renders it worthless. And so, that's kind of, a little bit of a branch off there. But and I want to get back on you and saying, I know how this has affected you personally for your salvation. You have grown up in church. You've gone through the motions. You've known what to do. You've known what to say.
Yeah.
But what was the point that you reached to where you was like, something needs to change?
Yeah, sure. So, I mentioned that as I hardened my heart, the conviction stopped coming, and I always thought, well, I'll just get saved someday.
Right? Yeah.
It'll happen when it's the right time for me to make it happen. Which, the time is now. By the way,
Absolutely,
you should definitely get saved now, because we're definitely not promised a tomorrow. I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago is when I was like, okay, I need to seriously, I need this relationship with Jesus. And it's not just as a, hey, I want to prevent myself from going to hell, but it was like, I need and want this relationship with Jesus right now in my life.
Right, yeah.
And I needed it, but despite being active in the church my entire life, I really didn't know what steps to take. I really didn't know what to do. And so I guess the first steps that I took is I talked to a few friends who were very close to me, men who I really respected and really trusted, because here I am telling them something that's very, very personal. And I didn't know how they were going to take it. I didn't know how they would react. And ultimately, what really led me, what really gave me the opportunity was 2020. The year 2020, the worst year ever. We'll see. 2021 might be worse. I don't know. 2020, all the listeners know, the country basically shut down for a period of time. Anything that would bring you joy was gone.
Sports cut off.
Sports, live music was no longer a thing.
If you're like me, food.
Restaurants were closed. Gyms were closed. And that was hard. Religious, like churches and that type of thing, they were not open. And for me, I work as a teacher, but it's kind of a time intensive job for me specifically,
Right.
because I'm involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. And so it it wasn't uncommon for, March, April for me to be working a 70-hour week. And then all of a sudden I'm working from home and there's no sports and there's no music. And so those 70-hour work weeks turned into like 20-hour work weeks because we were still working, but we were working from home. And you're just stuck at home.
Right.
And so 2020 basically shuts everything down. And so my personality, I like to be involved in everything. I want to feel every minute of every day. I want to be doing something. I just want to be involved. I don't ever want to sit still. I don't want to sit still and have to let my mind work.
Right.
I want to stay busy so that I don't have to think, basically. And 2020, there's nothing to do. You sit down in your house
And just think.
and you think.
To do, yeah.
And at this point, I'm just broken. I don't feel hope. Everything that was keeping my life together and running, there's nothing. I related. I was going through a pretty hard breakup at the time too, and so here I have all this extra time on my hands, and I'm just sitting at home, lonely and alone, and just broken. I feel like I have no hope, and as bad as 2020 was, it was at that time that I was finally broken enough that I need Jesus, and I need Jesus now.
And so once you got to that point, once you'd made that decision, you're like, oh, I'm broken, I'm hopeless, I'm lonely, and I'm lost, and I need something else. I need something sturdy that I can hang on to. I need something that I can hang my hat on every single day. I need a friend. I need somebody that's never going to leave me. I need this rock. Once you had got to that point, and you had said, okay, I'm going to do this, and you gave your life to Christ, how has that changed your life from then on? How what has been different?
Yeah, so earlier we were talking about, just being affiliated with religion tends to make your quality of life better. We mentioned that, and I totally agree with that. But from like the first day that I was saved, I just felt a different kind of peace, a different kind of relief. And I never knew that I could feel like that. I knew that, going to church made me feel good, and, but just the peace that comes with it. It's a feeling I had never had, and I don't even really know how to explain it.
But there's no words that do explain it. And I'm sure that if you're anything like me, the first thing you want to do is you've experienced this peace, and it's like it's so overwhelming. It's like I gotta tell somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I have to share this with somebody.
Sure.
And so, and that's not to take the spotlight off of you at all, but that speaks to me, personally, because, I'm kind of, I've been in that same boat. I've been where you are. And that's kind of what started me on the whole real faith journey. And I just want to say that in just the short year that you have totally given your life to Christ, and that you've decided that you wanted to do something with it, and you wanted to be a faithful servant of God, I just want to say that you've done probably more than even I have trying to pursue the gospel in a sense, because I remember the day Ryan was called up into church to give testimony for his life and stuff. We had started this new program at church where on Sunday evenings, Sunday nights, we'd take turns giving testimonies. People who wanted to give their testimonies, they'd jump up and they would just give their testimonies. And it was a really good experience. It was actually a really good idea, and I thought it worked out very well. But for those of you who don't know, about, I'd say 2 years ago, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, me and Calvin Smith had got together, and this was right after I had made the decision that I want to follow Christ wholeheartedly. And I'd gotten with Cal, and I'm like, dude, my life, it's changed. I'm telling you, there's something about it that I can't explain it. But I got to tell people about this. I got to do something about this. And I was like, what should we do? Because, Calvin, which he's been on the show before, like he was my guy, back in the day. If I had a problem, I was going to Cal. If I needed somebody to talk to, I was going to Cal. As long as we go to Cal, I'm like, what do we do? And he was like, let's start a Bible study, man. And I'm like, let's do it. So we started this Bible study group up, and which just started with just me and Calvin and a couple guys. And now we kind of have a little group chat thing going, and there's 25, almost 30 guys in there now. And so it has kind of grown over the years, but which Calvin's gone back to school, so that's kind of left me at times single-handedly just trying to just pick these guys up, and we're just all trying to comfort each other and do this whole group thing. And the whole purpose of that group was we can change Scott County. We can change. All it took was 12 disciples to change the world.
That's right. Yeah.
And Jesus, of course. But all it took was Jesus and 12 disciples. All it took was Jesus and 12 disciples to change the world. But now here we are, and it was like, obviously, I don't necessarily want to shoot out to change the world. I just want to change Scott County. I was like, if that's what happens, it happens, because it's got to start somewhere. And I was like, we had a vision, okay, last year, which that was our topic for 2020, was vision. And our group specifically, we had a vision, and we wanted to bring real faith to Scott County. We wanted to wake up the church masses to this religious cycle that we've been living in, and saying, we need something real. We need something tangible. We need to get off our butts and get out of church and we need to bring Jesus outside the church, basically. And so we started on this journey, and which it went well. There was, there were ups and there were down. But Ryan comes in, and I've been, I'd working my butt off. I'm going left and right. I'm taking guys out to dinner. We're knocking on doors. We're just trying to advance the gospel the best we can. And Ryan steps up in church one day and gives his testimony, and pretty sure it spoke to more people than I probably ever could have, honestly. You reached a lot of people that day in that message, because Ryan just gave his testimony, and he was like, listen, I was a religious zealot, and I lived my life thinking that I was saved, and thinking that I'm probably good because I've lived the right way, I've gone to church, I've done the right things, I've gone through the motions, and so I'm probably okay, and this is fine. And then he had this waking moment where he's like, this is not real faith. This is not what God wants.
Real.
This is not real. Yeah, and
it's not a real relationship.
And so you chose to go down that path, and when you did, you gave your testimony, and simply by giving your testimony in church that day, you impacted a lot of lives. Okay, and I remember specifically texting you. I think I've texted you actually that day that you did that. I was like, bro, that was awesome. Pretty sure you did what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years in 30 minutes. Okay. So it was awesome, and I was like, that was just it was such a cool moment, because just seeing how God can use somebody specifically, and that kind of brings us to our main point today. And for me specifically, as I'd said, I'd kind of fallen in that same boat that you had, and I'm not gonna. I don't necessarily want to go over my whole entire story, my whole testimony, but I'd not always lived a life that was Christ-like. I was raised and born in a Christian family, small town USA. Yeah, I'd lived and born here my entire life, and I'd always gone to the same church, New Haven Baptist Church. We've always gone here, and it was a great experience. And it was awesome. I was at which my dad for a long time was the choir director, and which eventually they went into heading the youth and working a lot in the youth for the last 15 years. And eventually, that was handed over to Chuck. But it had been in my family for so long. And it was just, honestly, it was just a point of, this is just what we do. Okay,
Yeah,
this is,
absolutely.
I was born in a church family. This is just kind of what we do. And so I went to church. I went through the motions. But I was only going through the motions at church. When I was at church on Sundays, and every single Wednesday you didn't miss church, okay? Like, that's just not what you did in my family, okay? You didn't miss church on Wednesday, and you didn't miss church on Sunday. And so you went. And so we'd go on Wednesdays and we'd go on Sundays, and everything would be great. You know, oh, I'm saved, I'm a good, Christian guy, whatever the case may be. But then I'd go to school throughout the week, and I would cuss up with my buddies. I would probably the most perverted soul out there that you could possibly think of. I had sex before I was married. I'd be drinking or partying on the weekends, whatever the case may be, and it wasn't good. And it got to a point where after I graduated high school and things started to go, you kind of hit that rock bottom like you had talked about.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where you kind of look back on all the things that you've done in your life, and it was like, that got me nowhere. That literally was the most meaningless thing I could have did with my life. And so then you ask yourself, you're like, where do I go from here? And you're like, well, and which this is when in that case where it's good. This is even though I wasn't on the right path with Jesus in my relationship, it was good because I was in church. Because when I hit rock bottom, I knew where I should go.
You knew where to look.
I knew where to look.
You knew where to look.
I knew where to look. And so even though for the last 20 years, or I guess it was, I don't know, I guess not, I was 19, 20 years old. Even though for the last 19, 20 years, everything had just been a blur, and everything had just went one in and out the other, and I knew the Bible stories and all this other stuff, and even though I didn't apply it to any part of my life, when the time came when I was broken and I knew needed something to change, I knew the place I needed to turn. And so I did, and in that moment, I turned to the Bible, and I turned to the gospel, and I started reading, and I started researching, and because, and I like I'd said, I'd known the stories, I known what I was supposed to do, but it was more than that, because it was like, I don't want to have my parents' faith. I don't want to have the stories my parents have fed me, that church has fed me. I want to make my own.
You want your own relationship.
I want my own relationship. It came to that point where I was like, I don't want what they had. I want something different. I want my own relationship with Christ, or whatever that case may be. So I set out on this journey to search for that. And in that, I decided, one of the big things, I had a couple of verses written down here that really had changed my life for the better was, I'd read things like in John 15:8, where he commands us that we should produce fruit. The vine and the branches. Everybody knows the vine and the branches story. And saying that we should produce fruit. As Christians in our life, we should be producing fruit. And so I asked myself, where's my fruit? And I thought, and which this is coming from a guy that in high school, I've been on mission trips. I've been to Guatemala, Costa Rica, Ecuador, the Galapagos Islands, plenty of places. And while I was over there, I was part of the plays, and as the masses of speaking the gospel, I'd never personally grabbed a translator and went and talked to somebody about Jesus. I'd never personally done anything specifically to try to advance the gospel in any ways. I was just there to have fun and enjoy the experience. Or at least that's what it felt like. And I'd realized I need to produce fruit. And so I'm thinking, where is my fruit? And I came to the realization that there is none. I've not produced fruit. The only fruit I've produced has been bad fruit. And then I come to things where it says like Matthew 7:21-23, and he says that not all who call upon the name of the Lord is going to be in heaven. They're going to get to that place of judgment, and they're going to say, Lord, Lord, haven't we prophesied in your name? Haven't we cast out demons? Haven't we preached the gospel? Haven't we done all these things? And God is going to say, flee from me because I never knew you. I never knew you. You said you might have known of me, but you never took the initiative to have a relationship with me. And so in that case, I don't know you because you never stood up in faith to have that relationship with me. And I read things like that, and it broke my heart. It scared me, and it made me fearful because I'm thinking, what have I done? How have I lived my life? I've not pursued a relationship. I've not produced fruit. I've definitely not produced good fruit. I've searched after God in other things where you shouldn't be finding God. I've not found it. I have strayed from this path, and it came to that point where it was like, I've not found the path. There was one more verse on here that says, faith without works is dead. James 2:14 in James, okay? And those were kind of the roundabout factor, I guess, that really dialed that home for me because, I'd read this that scared me in Matthew where it's like, there's going to be people who knew Jesus was real or knew God was real and they believed in him. And yet you're going to tell me that Jesus or God turns him away and says he never knew him? Like, what? Like, that's terrifying. Like, so, well, who's going to get saved then? And then I read things in John 15, where it says in the vine and the branches, now, hey, if you're not producing fruit, you're going to be cut off from the vine and you're going to be thrown in the pile and you're going to be burned. They're talking about hell, and you're going to be cut off from the vine and the branches, and that's scary, and that scared me. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then I get to James, and I read James, and he talks about, and which James is beautiful. I love when we went over James. We just talked about James, a while back, but we get to James, and he talks about this idea of faith and works, and he's like, hey, your faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead. Same way as if you have works and you don't have faith, it's dead. And so here I am to this realization that I've lacked both. I've not.
Sure.
I've lacked the faith.
Yeah.
I've lacked the works. I've called myself a Christian just because I've been in church. And it's like, what do I do now? And so I had made that decision then and there. It's like, this is not about what Jesus can save me from. Okay, this isn't about what Jesus can save me from, meaning hell. This isn't just about me wanting to get away from hell. This is about what Jesus can save me to. Okay, because at that point, you get to a brokenness point where you feel, in which obviously hell is going to be nothing like this, but you get to a point where you feel like it's hell on earth because you're so broken.
Well, we get so, and I don't even necessarily know if it's a bad thing, but we get so focused on salvation being our escape boat from hell.
Yeah,
it's like, if I get saved, I don't have to go to hell. But that wasn't necessarily my motivation. My motivation was having Jesus here and now.
Exactly.
And I believe you were maybe going there when
Yeah.
you were mentioning how, sometimes living in this world can feel like hell on earth, but it's so much easier when Jesus is walking with you, when you're dealing with whatever the struggles are, whether it's relationship issues or you're not getting along with someone who you believe that you should be getting along with, work issues, maybe you're struggling financially, but just having Jesus walking there with you gives you so much peace. And
I love the way that Chuck says it, because Chuck always says, and I'm pretty sure he probably got it from Andy Stanley. I'm not 100% sure, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be Andy Stanley. But he always says that it's not about when it comes to our salvation, it's not about us getting into heaven. It's about heaven getting into you.
I love that.
It's not. That's a Chuck original, of course. It's nothing to do with Andy Stanley, but it's this idea of salvation. Our whole purpose for salvation, for Jesus coming and saving us, is not necessarily to save us from hell. Actually, it's not to save us from hell. Okay, that's just an unintended benefit. Okay,
Sure, yeah.
The point of Jesus coming and saving us is to have a relationship with us. The point of Jesus coming to save for us is to get heaven on earth, because that was Earth's original design. Back before Adam and Eve, it was heaven on earth. It was perfect. There was no sin. There was no hate. There was no hurt and crying and tears and shame and guilt. There was none of that. It was heaven on earth. And so that was God's original plan. So the whole point, whenever sin is introduced, is God's plan to get heaven back on earth, which obviously that's never going to happen, because you skip to the end of Revelations, we know that, well, actually, I guess it will eventually, but we know that there is going to be coming, an end times, and God is going to call us up. And I'm not here, to get into the end time study or nothing, but I'm just saying that the purpose is to get heaven on earth. That is what your salvation consists of. It's not about what salvation can save you from. It's about what salvation can save you to.
Your salvation doesn't start when you get to heaven. Mm-hmm. Like when
I like that.
When you get to spend forever with Jesus, that starts here and now.
Absolutely, dude. I love that. That literally just sent chills down my body. I'm not even kidding you. Like that. It's not about your relationship with Jesus doesn't start whenever you get that presence of Jesus. That doesn't start when you hit heaven, dude. That starts the day you decide to change your life and be that new creation that God tells you that He will make you into.
And as someone who lived that fake faith life for a long time,
same, yeah,
living that real faith, and just it's it's different. You just live differently.
And that is what begs the whole point of this podcast. The whole point of bringing you onto this podcast and you sharing your story and me kind of sharing some of my story is not just so me and you can just sit here and, glass over old times. Man, you remember when we used to be old dirty rotten sinners and, whatever the case may be. And the point is that we want to get the word out to you guys, to whoever is listening to this, to whoever's ears that this is going into, to have you evaluate your faith. The thing, I guess, I don't know if it's his saying or not, but I guess it's probably not. But I always heard him say it. He's the one I heard from. But Ken Freeman, he always said that a faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. A faith that cannot be tested cannot be trusted. And that has stuck with me because that has rang true, so true in my life. A faith that cannot be tested cannot be trusted. So I challenge you, if you're listening to this, to challenge your faith, to challenge it. It's okay to challenge your faith. Ask the questions. And it's like Ryan was saying, that it gets to a point where you just fill your life with so much dirt and clutter and just things to take your mind off so you don't think. Stop. Don't do that. 2020 is the perfect time. We have the perfect time right now, okay, to just stop and think. And I know it's hard. I know it's not comfortable, but we weren't called to be comfortable, okay? We were called to be out of our comfort zone, to be the salt and the light of the earth. And so if you're one of those people that kind of and I'm speaking directly more so to, obviously, if you're out there and you don't know Jesus, if you're hearing this, I beg you and I plead with you to study it and to get into the Word. Try to understand that Jesus Christ came to this earth. He was the Son of God, that He died on the cross, that He was buried, and He rose again 3 days later. He resurrected from the grave, and He did that all for you. He did that all for you. And so I beg you that if you're one out there and you don't know Jesus, I pray that you will. But this specifically, I'm speaking more so to my younger in the faith Christians out there, or so-called, if you think that you've been saved, if you think that or you've been raised in church your whole life, or you've been in the Bible Belt, or whatever the case may be, this is specifically for you because I challenge you to challenge your faith. So ask the hard questions. So I guess some of those questions that you could ask, is where are my fruits? Have I produced fruits in my life? Has there been evidence of change in my life? Because like you were saying, as soon as it happened, as soon as you made the choice to follow Jesus, there was a peace and a comfort about you that you couldn't even understand. Definitely. Okay, and it's like I feel that same thing, and I wish I could put it into words so that you guys could understand it, but you can't. And that's not saying I'm not out here, teaching some prosperity gospel, because your life is gonna be hard, if not harder, after you're saved. You're gonna have struggles, but through the storms, through the struggles, there is gonna be a peace about you that you can't even understand. And I know that that's hard looking out on the outside thinking, so you're going to tell me that my life is going to be harder, but it's going to be easier. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay? I understand how screwed up that sounds, but there's a peace about it that it passes all understanding. There's a joy with it that you can't even fathom. And so I challenge you to ask those questions. I mean, where are my fruits? Where is my evidence? Where my evidence lies? And how have I acted differently than the world? That's the big one that I challenge my guys to ask them on a daily basis is, if somebody that you did not know were to job shadow you, I guess, for instance, for a whole entire day, they didn't know anything about you. Literally, they just sicked them on you, and they're to be by your side all day, watch every single movement and action that you do. When they came to the end of it to give their little resume report of who you are, would a Christian be on there? Okay, and I'm not talking about, their job shadowing you not on a Sunday, not on Wednesday, okay? This is on a Monday morning, okay? Your worst time. The traffic to work was terrible, and you go to work, and work was awful, okay? And just everything in the world is falling apart, okay? And their job shadowing you on this Monday. What's it going to say on that resume? Is they're really peaceful. They have a joy about them that I really don't really understand. I don't know what's going on with them, but I would like to know more about it.
And as a believer, you never know when you are being watched that way.
And you don't, and you are being watched that way. The people Constantly. Who are on the unbelievers, and that's what it is more so today. Because even you'll find, if you ever watch like Christian and atheist debates, like even in the atheist debates nowadays, the most debates that you watch, it's like the whole thing is like less over if God exists, and it's just like, if He does exist, why does this happen and why does that happen? You see what I'm saying? It's like there's like less because there's so much evidence for the fact that Jesus Christ was who he said he was. He was the Son of God, and he died. He for sure died, and he for sure rose from the grave. There's so much evidence that supports that historically. And so people like don't even dispute that anymore. It's just like the fact it's like, sure, God's real. We don't care. We don't want it. Because when this whole thing went down in California, man, people holding up signs with like, get God out of California. Or whatever the case may be. Did you ever see any of those?
No.
When all these riots and stuff were going down in like California, there were just, riots after riots. When people see people holding up signs and like, we want God out of here, like get God out of California. Okay, and so it's like the question is like it's not even necessarily a question of like, is God real? It's like, we don't want what this guy has to offer. They just totally shut him down altogether. And so that's just the world that we live in today. It's not even necessarily a question of that. And so that's why I asked you to. It's not necessarily a question of, is God real? Because I tell you, he's real. Okay? I've seen the evidence of God in my life and in many people's lives. And there's a God out there, and he loves you, and he wants you to come to him. But I asked you that if you are one of those people that was raised in church, and it's not necessarily a question of God is real, because you have the believing part, right? You have the believing part down. So that's not where we're struggling at. The believing part's not where we're struggling. It's the faithfulness part. It's the being sanctified part. It's the actually doing the work and doing the will, and not being hearers of the word, but being doers of the word as well. That's where we struggle. Okay, and so it's not necessarily it's not just oh, do I believe God is real? Is there evidence for God? Whatever this case may be. If you're out there and you're listening to this, and this has been, you can resonate with that, I challenge you to question your faith. What has been real? Has there been change in my life? Because the same thing for me, there was a change in my life whenever Christ entered in my life, and when I decided I want to go all in for Christ. All of a sudden, I specifically remember the day after that I had made the choice to, you know what, I'm not going to sit on the fence anymore. Okay, I'm not going to play dumb. I'm not going to play like I know the rules and like I know everything about it, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to go all in for Christ. I was at the gym, and I was on the treadmill. Nobody else is in there. It's midday because I'm working out on my lunch break, and I feel like the Holy Spirit move over me, and it's like I know that you can't describe that feeling, but it's just like something was like nudging at me. I was like, you need to tell people about Jesus. You got to tell people about Jesus. I'm like, there's nobody in here. And I turn around, and there's this dude on the cable machine, tatted up. Man, he's got like naked girl, like straight up naked girls on his arm, tatted on there, fully tatted from head. Which I'm not saying anything bad against tattoos. I'm just saying like it was obvious like this guy was not a Christian. Okay, I mean he's like naked girls and just like profanity and just like all this like bad stuff like up and down his body, and it's like the Holy Spirit's like, go talk to that guy, and I'm like, are you serious? Like this guy he's got like big old beard and he's like jacked out of his mind. I'm just like, my goodness, of course. Like this has to be the one time. And so I remember feeling so sick. I mean, I felt nauseous. I literally felt like I was going to throw up because I was so nervous. And I go into the bathroom, I'm praying. I'm like, is this really what you want me to do? And I go back outside and he was already gone. Okay, so I didn't get a chance to speak to him. But the call was there. You know what I'm saying? It was like before, it was like I had no real call, like intentions of telling people, and there was never, when I was out in public, there was never a time when it was like, oh, go tell that person about Jesus. Different. Go tell that person about Jesus. Go tell that person about Jesus. Go tell about what Jesus has done in your life. There was never like things that like tugged at me like that. And now it's like, bro, I can't go anywhere. I'm in like the men's bathroom at a football game, okay, and it's like that guy in the urinal next to you, and it's like the Holy Spirit's nudging you. It's like, tell that guy about Jesus. I'm like, not right now, But it's like it's everywhere. It's everywhere you go. I mean, there's a change, okay, that takes place, and it's not just inside of you. It's outside of you. There's a change.
And I like the devil will use anything to keep you from sharing that faith as well.
He will.
Anything. I have countless examples in my own life, but a lot of time for me, it's just insecurity. It's like, well, I'm not really a good Christian. It's like I sin and fall short, daily. I have done things that would ruin my testimony. It's like, well, I can't go talk to them because they've heard me use the F word,
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't want to talk to them because we're in the gym. Some of my most convicting moments have been in the gym, actually.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure.
and I remember recently, just like it was super late at night. I never work out late at night, but I couldn't sleep, and so I was at the gym at like a random hour, like 2:30 in the morning, and there was a couple in there. I just had this weird, like need urge.
Yeah, yeah. But you can't explain it. Yeah.
To tell this guy about Jesus, and I didn't. I blew it. And not only was I awake at this odd hour for a reason,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but he was there at the gym for a reason, and I have this conviction, and I still blew it.
But that is the whole point of what we're talking about. It's like, yeah, you blew it, but you've had opportunities afterwards. You've made up for those.
Absolutely,
You've
sure.
had chances to share the gospel, and you've matured in being able to tell people about Jesus. But the important part is that even though that you were so fresh out of giving the commitment to go into Christ, the conviction was there. You felt the need.
Yeah,
I need to tell
it's
that person
definitely
about
there.
Jesus. Okay, and so if there's anything that I could give you out there, that if you're listening to this, I wish that you would challenge your faith, that you would ask those important questions. And so some of those questions being, like you just said, do I feel the urge? Do I feel the need to share the gospel? Okay, because that's a big one. And so ask yourself, it's like, am I producing fruit? Is there evidence in my life? Do I look different than the world? Is there any difference for me than what the rest of the world is doing? Because there should be. The world says that we're to be salt of the earth, that we're to be the light of the earth. We're to be a diamond on a black background. Okay, we're to stand out and be a difference in this world. And so look at yourself and look at your life and look at the life that you've lived and ask yourself, where is that fruit? Where is that evidence? Has there been such a change in my life? Because you're going to be a new person. The Bible says that you are a new creation whenever you are saved. The old has passed away and the new has come. You're a new creation. And so are you still living in that past sin? Are you still living that old life even though you're thinking, oh, well, I've given my life to Christ, and I go to church like I should or whatever the case may be. But are you a new creation? Has it changed you to your core being? And those are some of the ways that you can tell if they've actually changed you, is because where's that faith at? Where's that fruit at? Where's that evidence? And one of the big ones is there an urge to tell people about the gospel? Because whenever you receive Jesus in your life, whenever you receive that real faith, it does something to you that is so big, that's so overwhelming. It fills your cup so full that it overflows, and you have to tell somebody else.
Absolutely.
You have to tell the world.
Yeah.
You have to show the world. Okay? And I know that can be scary, but God has given you the tools necessary to preach the gospel and to tell the gospel. And I know that it can be overwhelming sometimes, but God has given you your own story to tell other people, and that is enough to get people saved, to get people to come to the cross. Just your story in and of itself. You don't have to have some major sob story. You don't have to know major theology. You don't have to memorize every book in the Bible to be able to tell people about Jesus.
Just let me tell you what Jesus has done for me.
Let me tell you what Jesus has done for me. And that works wonders, okay? And so if you're out there and you decided, hey, you want to follow Jesus, you've been struggling with how do I advance my faith? How do I advance the gospel? That is a great tool to use. What has God done for me? Let me tell you what he has done for me. Let me tell you how he's changed my life. Or if somebody's coming to you with a problem, hey, man, I recognize that problem. I've had similar problems. Let me tell you what fixed that problem for me. Let me tell you the solution to that problem. There are so many ways that you can use the story that God gave you to advance the gospel in other people. And so use that. But mainly, as for our main point today is just challenge your faith. Question it. Don't just sit by and think you're fine. Even if you think that, hey, I'm on the high side, sit down, stop for 2 seconds, and challenge your faith. Ask yourself, where is the evidence of my faith? Where is the fruit of my faith? Am I producing good fruit or am I producing bad fruit? Do I look different than the world around me? Am I the salt of the earth? Am I the light of the earth? Has there been a change about me? I remember back when I accepted Jesus in my life, and you know what? My life has looked different since then. And I want to tell you, and not to put fear in you, not to scare you, but I tell you this with love in my heart, if there's not been a change, you need to evaluate your faith. You need to evaluate your salvation. If there's not been a change in your life, if you're not seeing a difference from who you were and who you are now, if you're not seeing that good fruit being produced, and if you don't have a desire to see lost people saved, then there is a real problem wrong. There's a big problem. Okay, and you need to evaluate that. You need to evaluate your faith, and you need to see what is going on and what can be fixed, because the odds are maybe your relationship isn't the best that you thought it was. Maybe your salvation isn't there at all, because you need to question that. And that's not to, like I said, that's not to scare you into salvation. That's not to scare you into anything. That's just to get your wheels turning. You need to be thinking about it always, constantly thinking about, where's my faith lie? Where's my fruit line? Where's my evidence line? Am I looking different? And you need to make that decision for yourself, and you need to evaluate yourself and choose, hey, my life's not been different. I've not produced any of the good fruits in my life. I've not told anybody about Jesus. I have no desire. When I'm out in public, when I'm talking to people, or when I'm at the cash register in the store, when I'm at the Walmart, or whenever I'm at a restaurant and our waiter's with us, if there's no desire ever to tell people about Jesus, if you don't have that urge, I need to tell that person about Jesus, or there's an opportunity to tell a person about Jesus, if you're not seeing that in your life, then I would be evaluating my circumstances. I would be evaluating where my faith lies, because chances are you're not having a real faith and you don't have a real salvation, because you need Jesus, and real Jesus changes you. Real faith challenges real life. Real faith impacts real life. Real faith changes real life. And that is the whole purpose of why we started this podcast, is because we want to see people with their lives change. We want to see people make a difference in their lives. We want to see people come to Christ. Not just come to Christ, but we want to make disciples. We want to see them branch off and make other disciples. We want to see this thing grow. And the only way that we can do it is if we do it through love, if we do it through real faith, if we do it through real life. So, that's really all I got for you guys today. I know that we kind of cut it long today, but there was just a lot to say. Really, there's a lot of pent-up emotions, a lot of things that we've been needing to say on the podcast, and I thought it was a perfect time bringing Ryan on to share some of his story, and to also share some of mine, because we constantly just go back to this real faith. We constantly go back to the beginnings of our podcast, and that's the whole reason for it. Is we want to see you guys challenge your faith. We want to see you guys produce a real faith. We want to see you guys come to Jesus and make a difference in the world, and challenge the gospel, and pursue it, and have better lives for it. So, Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you coming out here.
Thanks for having me very much.
But until next time, we're going to be on with Kevin Terry, finishing our Romans Part 2 series. So stick around for that. If you guys haven't already, check us out on our YouTube channel. This video will be up on YouTube, so you guys can see us in person, see our faces, and see us talking about some of this really cool stuff. Also, check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Anchor, any of our big major podcasting platforms. Just go and check it out. Make sure to hit that like or subscribe button if you haven't already, so that we can help further the gospel. But until next time, guys, we'll see you then. This is Crosswalk. Thank you.